What's up, guys? This is Louis back with another episode of The Development. Today, I have a special guest, James Rodriguez. He is a professional illustrator. James, how you been?
Uh, Not too bad. Coping with the quarantine. Thankfully, it's coming down a little bit, but just busy as always, pretty much.
All right, yeah, we've been dealing with a lot of craziness nowadays. How's it been for you so far? Like, how's it been?
Um, well, if you talk about the whole quarantine situation, I was furloughed from my day job, but like many artists, we are never without work as best we can. So I was able to finish off a card series for Marvel Masterpieces. So I did that series was finished in time. I feel some of my best work for Upper Deck so far. And I just finished up a new set for Bomber Beauties, which is a charity organization.
Okay.
So I did 25 cards, 15 cards for that. I worked a little bit on my book. I did some other freelance work. Got some sketch covers done, and took care of my folks during this whole thing, and talked to my wife every day because unfortunately she's still in the Philippines. We're in the middle of trying to get the immigration papers worked. But yeah, beyond anything else, it's just been busy. It's pretty much like any other day for me at this point.
That's good. That's good. Gotta stay busy. That's good that even though you've been furloughed from your job, that you still have some freelance work.
Yeah.
Everybody's fortunate enough. Um, but little backstory. I met James. It was man. I don't.
It was a couple of conventions ago. Well, I think was it. I think we met. Was it New York Comic Con or was it PowCon?
It was actually Eternal Con.
Okay.
I know I
Oh
was.
yeah. Frank Patz's show. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was cosplaying. I know we was going on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
You jumped on,
Right.
and
That's now I remember. Yeah. I saw you guys. I figured Eternal Con. I was like, yeah. So we took the side bus. We all got off at the same stop, and we all walked in. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That was I think the second. No, that was like the first or second
yeah,
Eternal Con that was going on. That was years back.
yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that we went back that far. But yeah, I mean, Eternal Con was fun. I mean, the first Eternal Con was good. I personally I love doing the conventions. I've been doing them for I think my first convention as a quote unquote guest was I think back in '93. That was the Philadelphia Comic Con show. I was working as a pinup artist for a different company now. They did this thing called, God, I'm forgetting the name. Oh, Xenia. They would try to. It was trying to be almost like a Cry for Dawn type of story where she's an entity that your people call upon her and things go bad. As much as you desire things go bad for you, but you still get what you want, but not the way you were hoping for. So it was an interesting thing to do that. And after that, the next kind of conventions I ever did was mostly as a freelancer, doing just pinup work and everything. And then eventually, I met this guy at a Madison Square convention. They only had like three of them at that point, and it was Philip Clark. He was working as a digital illustrator for a printing company, and we got together. He had a first artist for his first book. The book was called Quantum Rock of Ages, which was a sci-fi time travel interdimensional storyline. And his first artist, he decided to leave. Creative differences, which is a misnomer for basically they just didn't get along, or something just didn't go right.
Yeah.
So I took over the book on issue number 3, and I kept doing it up through issue 7. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be a 12-issue series. We were getting a decent amount of feedback. We even got David Mack to do an alternate pinup for us. We got Mark Texiera. We got Sean Chen, a bunch of other artists to do pinups for a compilation book of the first 4 issues. Unfortunately, life happens. He met a girl, got married, moved to California, and that was pretty much the end of the series. I still get asked about the book series too. I have a few copies still left over. I kind of give away as prizes at conventions. But after that, the main thing I started to get into is developing my own character. I had one character I was developing called Navaja. Spanish for the blade,
Yeah.
which was going okay, but for some reason, and this happens to a lot of artists, that they get stuck on something and they don't know where else to go from that point.
Yeah.
So I started sketching something else on the side just to maybe get some creative juices flowing, and that's how I developed my character, Sarah, which
Okay.
is now Sarah of Earth, which I've been developing for years now. It did have a first iteration with another writer that hooked up with me, and we did produce 2 issues. We're working on a third, but again, unfortunately, creative differences, and also the fact that let's put it this way, I'm not going to mention names, but the main thing is if you're going to work for a writer, you should have the writer respect the original work, and the original concept. It should be collaborative. You should be able to, you know, accept his or her ideas, and they should do the same for you as the creator. Listen, when I first hooked up with the guy, he actually, just for fun, he actually rewrote the entire first issue.
Mm.
I read it and actually read far better than my original idea. And I said, okay, fine, I'll make the jump. I actually scrapped more than half what I already drew and redrew it again based on the script that he came in with some extra touches of myself, and it was good. And then, but unfortunately, after a time, it seemed like he was trying to make it like it was his own thing, and anything I put in, he just would hear it, but not put in, or not even remotely even consider it. And that's when the point when it becomes where, especially as an artist, the last thing you want to do is lose the the energy for your own creation. So we split up. I took my character back. Everything that he had originally put in, I removed. So there's no conflict later on. That's, oh, you still stole my idea. No, everything he put in is out, and I just revamped it a bit more closer to what my original vision was for it. And right now, originally I wanted to do a Kickstarter for this year, but unfortunately, COVID happened. Family stuff and work. But with luck, I was able to get some pages more, I think more pages done, and God willing, I'll have it ready for Kickstarter by early of next year. And so far, people have been really anxious for this because it's been a project I've been talking about for many years. And the basic premise is young girl, especially young Latina girl, which I think there's enough representation out there,
Yep. Yep.
gets imbued with a power source. She becomes almost a Green Lantern-ish.
Okay.
But she also has to deal with being in high school, dealing with anything that high schoolers have gone through. Lord knows I've been through a lot of stuff, and imbue that in a character that I hope is relatable. And with luck, come 2021, Sarah of Earth will premiere. So
All right. All right. Yeah. There's not a lot of Hispanic reputation in comic books. Very little. I can only name like one or two that I know of,
right,
and that's awesome. Hope I wish you many of luck,
thank
and
you.
even at the Kickstarter, I'll donate. Hey, you gotta support your peoples. You gotta support just local artists and businesses and illustrators.
Absolutely.
Um, Man, that's great. Any like it sucks about like what's been going on with like
Mhm.
the writers and
Right.
not using your work or like
Right.
changing it. Any person like or like even business you would want to work with if like you had the chance.
Uh, if you're talking like mainstream comics, for example, my biggest dream would definitely to work on a Batman title. I would love to work on a Batman title. But besides that, the one thing it's very very difficult, especially nowadays. Basically, for a long time now, we have the artist writer, who's the artist writes it himself and everything else. But even I admit I am not the greatest writer in the world. I have a decent plot line. I know I've had guys where I've helped them out with storylines where they fed me what they're thinking about, and I'll just see what my perspective is. And that's always great, having a nice back and forth collaboration with a writer or fellow artist, and you get something really good out of it sometimes, which is great. It's where, unfortunately, it's the egos that happen,
Yeah.
and sometimes you don't notice it because you're in a sense almost enthralled by the fact that this guy is so. It's like, oh man, you want to work with me? It's like, so there must be something cool about what I'm doing, that this guy wants to come over and help me out. So
Yeah.
great. So there's a bit of an ego thing there. It boosts you up a little bit, but then reality hits, and you start noticing, okay, something is definitely not working here. Especially when you start pointing to point, you rather work on sketch cards than your own work. So um, you have to really start facing it and realize that you have to either talk to the individual, say, okay, let's see if we can work things out if you still like the person. But if not, just it's best to just separate. You know, let them take whatever they brought in, and you take whatever you brought into it, and leave it at that. Unfortunately, there are cases where that doesn't happen, where the writer has contributed a lot, or the writer created the whole thing, and the artist is just there, and helping out. But especially in any kind of visual medium, specifically comics, both of them are practically equal to a sense. When Stan Lee was writing early on, he would write the scripts and everything else, and the artists would do it. It was later, once I think he became editor at Marvel, that he kind of stopped writing scripts. He would actually just write a plot, give it to a guy like Steve Ditko or Jack Kirby, and they'd actually make everything up based just on the plot. No dialogue. And then Stan would get back, look at it, and say, okay, this is where I can put this line, this line, this line. So that was more definitely artist based.
Definitely.
Whereas now it's really tough to find someone you're comfortable with. I know a lot of writers who want to find an artist to work with, and a lot of artists would like to find a writer, maybe to help them out on their project. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to give up a little bit of what you want to do for another project to help you out, because you have to look at the big picture, because you never know what that project might lead to. Not to say don't stop what you're own doing, but you got to get some stuff out there. And the key thing, especially in those kind of relationships, it's almost like having any kind of relationship, is you have to have equal respect.
Definitely.
If you don't have it, or you can't just talk about it, then that relationship's not going to go anywhere. You might do it just to get it done with, and then you walk away. I mean, I know a case where a writer was actually working with artists, not even in the same country.
Mm.
He was writing here. His artist was in Europe, and it got to the point where even the artists in Europe just didn't want to deal with the guy. He just finished whatever he was assigned to do it, give him his money, and God bless, go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's going to happen. I think more so in the indie uh, industry more than the mainstream, because mainstream, you probably already, most guys have already gone through that, so they're a little more tempered. I'm saying that not. I'm not saying that a lot of indie guys aren't professional, but there's a certain level that you have to understand. You come in with an understanding. It's corporate. You are being paid a lot of money because your work is drawing the crowd in, and that wasn't the case actually before Image. Before Image, our artists got paid just a standard salary. It's what you got paid per page, or by the hour. Some companies, after Image, and they blew page rates up like crazy. Let's say you were working at Marvel, you're getting paid, let's say $130 a page. Work for Image, like let's say Todd McFarlane came up to you saying, "I'll give you 300 a page." I'd rather work for Todd. So it's like, it's all about the money. Um, but yeah, I mean, like writer artist, it's the relationship. You have to make sure you get one right. It's not going to be right the first time. It's going to take trying and trying again. But you have to be willing to put yourself out there. But if, as long as you have equal respect for each other and what you bring to the table, hopefully it'll work out.
Yeah, you're definitely right. You're not the first person that said sometimes you gotta just give a little bit up
Mm.
to see where that can take you. And I totally believe in that. Like, don't give up on everything, or or not on like everything, but like just enough to make sure like your stuff is still in there, and then there's an understanding between both, the artist and the writer
Yeah.
on that, like, hey, this is what I like some of this. Try to mix it up because it is kind of hard. Everybody's ego is very different, and then like it clashes with your work. It's not the same,
Right.
and then you do get annoyed, and it
Yeah,
just sucks.
yeah. I mean, the noise is going to happen even in the best of relationships, but once you go through it and end product is something that everybody else enjoys, and you kind of realize, okay, it was worth it. We can go through this again, and but you already know what's going to happen. So also, but also at the same time, you know how to handle each other a little better. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. Maybe the artist can visualize better than the writer can, or even the writer can sometimes visualize something that you can't really describe full out, but he can write it out and tell you exactly what you want. And it's the thing. It's like the way I always looked at comics, and a lot of comic artists say this too. It's film on paper. The only difference is you have movies that cost millions of dollars to make, whereas a comic book could cost under 1,000, maybe less. But you are you have the writer, but as the artist, the one thing you do bring to the table, and I'm not trying to go down on writers at all because they do bring a lot. Is that as the artist, you are basically the director, the cameraman, you're also the actors on the page. You define how everything looks based on what's written. What I've always looked at scripts, to me, anyways, and a few even film directors said that it's more like a blueprint. It's not final. You can always make adjustments as you go along.
Yeah.
So, because for example, what I tend to do is when I've worked on some scripts that I get, I will do a mock-up, which is I'll just get regular blank in half by paper, in half by 11 copy paper, fold it in half, and staple them to look like a book, and I'll start sketching it really quickly based on the page. The one liberty, thankfully, the writers I've had before have given me is they may say they want 6 panels on the page, for example. When I read it, I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it still needs maybe one more panel. Or maybe this one's extra, this one can move over here. Thankfully, they've given me at least the leeway to pace out the story to best fit the story. Because the one thing I've always endeavored to do is as you turn the page, I want the audience who's reading it to be excited at what's going to happen next. So I always leave what is called a little cliffhanger moment on usually the odd numbered page. At the end, to say, okay, what's happening here? Let's turn. Oh my God, this time to make it's a page turn. You want them to turn the page over. You don't want to read a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to know anything about this anymore. Uh, but it's more so, especially as an independent, because you want to grab that audience. You want to make the story at least exciting enough or interesting enough that they want to keep reading. Whereas if you have established books like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and all that, they already have kind of an established audience, so they'll read it. Not saying they'll read it regardless, but there is one of the best examples I can give people is after Jim Lee drew the Hush story arc, he went on to do a Superman arc with Brian Azzaro.
Okay.
And Azzaro is known more for writing crime noir. He wrote 100 Bullets,
Okay.
and him and Jim Lee. Okay, let's see what they do. And it started off okay, but I say by issue 4 or 5, it started like I don't know where the hell the story was going, and it got like I just don't want to read this anymore. It just made no sense. But I kept buying it for just one reason, because Jim Lee was drawing it, and that was it. Every guy I know who ever picked up that series has said, yeah, Azzaro and superheroes just doesn't quite work, but I bought it because Jim Lee, and that's going to happen. Again, that was a situation where if it was like an indie or you were self-publishing, you'd probably either change writers or change artists. But this is corporate, so you're stuck. You're a contract. You got to finish it. So that's a whole different thing. Um, but aside from that, the one thing that I've always approached comics as is, like I say, I approach it as film on paper because I've done storyboards before. I've done storyboards for commercials, some TV programs. Unfortunately, never saw the light of day, but it was fun to do. And I did art advertising. So if you ever see Mad Men,
Yeah.
that was really what the environment was like.
Okay.
And there was a lot of backstabbing. Oh my God. And I used to work for this company that no longer exists, but they were called Gem Studios. They were based in Lexington Avenue
Okay.
and
Sounds
42nd Street.
familiar.
Yeah, they were like they were in the Chrysler Building,
Okay.
so we were there, and we would do stuff like for Texaco, Kodak, and everything else. And what would technically would be this is more like about like insider office politics. Everybody would contribute to what they call the studio portfolio. I do a piece, this other guy would do a piece, and that portfolio would show off to clients, to let's say Saatchi and Saatchi, Younger Rubicam, these are advertising agencies, and they say, oh, okay, I like this guy. Let's say Saatchi is doing a Kodak campaign. They want to do something with it, so they pick the artist who's gonna be the lead guy. So he'll do like the main shots. Everybody else would do like backgrounds or side shots and everything else. But that's how you're supposed to work. On basis of my work, I know we got like a Kodak account, we got a Texaco account, but they relegated me because the other artists felt I was too new to relegate me to other stuff aside from the stuff that my work actually got them. It's like, oh, I hadn't accepted in the beginning. I was like, this was very, very early in my career.
Yeah.
So I took them, and the money was insane. I mean, I was making, at the time, almost 1,500 like every other week.
Okay.
I mean, for 1996, that was nuts. Um, and the benefits were great. They if it was working late, they'd get a car to take you home. If it was working on a Saturday morning, they'd actually get you breakfast. So I mean, come on, those are things you're like, oh crap, this is great. But unfortunately, the rest of the team, who were like I guess veterans, and I was the new guy, they either got upset that my work was getting the praise, but that's why they hired me. You hired me to get your clients, so why are you trying to
Yeah.
backstab me?
Yeah.
So after a time, I was like, I just can't deal with this, and I left. Later on, I find out, this was years later, I find out the company collapsed because the owners were embezzling from their employees.
Oof.
So it's a good thing I left, anyways. So that was that. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I over my career and experience, I've done a lot of different things. Like I mentioned to you before, I worked in television as a art director. I worked off Broadway, not anything artistic, but I was the light and sound.
Okay.
So that was interesting to work on, like on a live stage show. I worked on that, and I also did like TV commercials, and I got a chance to actually direct two hip hop music videos,
That's cool.
which I mean I'm not I like hip hop, but I wasn't like I'm like so knowledgeable about it. It was interesting to get a chance to direct, so I got that done. That was kind of fun, and but my main passion has always been comics ever since I was a kid, and I went to the High School of Art and Design. Graduated in '89. Then I went to School of Visual Arts after that, where I got the chance to learn from Walt Simonson. Had Klaus Janson, had Joe Orlando, um, and thankfully to this day, Walter and I are still friends. We still talk, and it's really cool. But yeah, the one thing that's been consistent in my life has been always been my work. Um, Even when I'm on the train, I got to sketch something. Even if it's a couple wavy lines, I'll do that. And but beyond what I'm telling you right now is that working in comics is a career that's, at least for me, it's worth it, the pain, but it's not something that's going to make you rich overnight.
Definitely.
I see a lot of kids who show me their portfolios at conventions, and unlike other guys, even if the work isn't the best, I will still try to find at least something they can hang their hat on and push them to do a little better. But regardless of, the one thing I always tell them is, don't go into this industry if you want to make money. There are other ways to make money. Do this illustration in general only if you really love the work. If you
Definitely.
love the work, then it's gonna be worth it for you, despite the pain, despite the arrogance of others or the egos, whatever. Your work is what you value yourself on, and I value myself on my work, aside from my wife and our kids and my family. But the work is who I am, as I'm sure there are things you like to do that mean a lot more to you. So, and every artist has that in them, writers as well. But yeah, so it's a tough life in a sense. There are very few guys I know that really make it to the big leagues. I mean, from my graduating class in college, I know three guys in my entire graduating class that actually have worked. Still today, they're still doing stuff for
Mm.
DC or Marvel, or have their own stuff going on. I mean, my graduating class for me is still kind of. I mean, I had Jamal Igle who graduated with me. He's gone on to do Supergirl, Justice League. He's
Jamal Igle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jamal Igle. He
I think he's done stuff for Boom Studios. If
Yeah,
I'm
he's
not. Yeah. I
exactly
think I
Boom
follow him.
Studios.
Yeah.
I also had Jean Paul Leon.
Okay.
He went on to do Earth X
Okay.
for Marvel. So Alex Ross picked him to do Earth X, which was like also he started off early on working for Milestone Comics. So I think he did Blood Syndicate back in the day, and also Sean Martinborough, who I think he's done Thief of Thieves for at least the last I'm thinking at least maybe the last 5 years, and he just did a TED Talk recently. So Sean, I think out of all of us, I think Sean's really done well. There's also Kerry Randolph. I know didn't graduate from, but I know him a lot pretty well too. But yeah, I mean, there are very few guys that, especially if you're in the industry, that you can name on one finger that you are like the superstars. There's the Jim Lees, the Tom McFarlane, the Rob Liefelds. But a lot of guys don't know like the Gene Collins. They don't know a lot of like even John Byrne's huge, but it took him a while to become huge. Even like the new guys, there's Maz, there's like Buzz, Mike Lilly, who I respect a lot, and they're not like the most well known names, but in amongst the fans in the industry, they know them. The general public is a whole different story. The general public, if you ask them who do you know in comics, the most of the public tell you is Stan Lee, and that's pretty much it. They're not gonna know who Jack Kirby really is, or who Steve Ditko, Frank Frazetta, or Frank Miller. But yeah, this is a very small community. There's a huge outreach, and the one thing I'm kind of happy about is, especially over the last couple of years, with the MCU, what the DC's gonna is the fact that the comics industry, the work behind it has, at least in my view, finally been appreciated. That this stuff has been there for years, and there's so much material that people don't even know about. I mean, I work at a comic book store. I work at Newberry Comics up in West Nyack, and there's so many times I've met people who are just getting into books, and they want to know what the source material is. When I tell them, like for example, the whole Infinity War saga for the films, and I show them the book, and tell them it's so far different,
Yep.
and they're actually amazed. Because I didn't realize it was like and the one thing that's kind of funny is when you show them like what they call the graphic novel, and tell them this is just a compilation. It's not the original issues. And they're even surprised when they say there's issues. Yes,
Yeah.
there's the pamphlet books and there's the compilations, and I don't know if people know this, but the reason why there are so many graphic novels like let's say Barnes and Noble is because Marvel, I think it's either Marvel or DC, I think it was Jim Shooter more when he was editor in chief at Marvel. Do you remember Borders?
Yeah.
Okay, when Borders was around, they wanted to get their books in there, but they wouldn't accept comic book books, the pamphlet books. So they decided, you know what? Let's get the story arcs that we know, making compilations, put them as trade paperbacks, call them graphic novels, and Borders would accept it, and they did. So did Barnes and Noble and so forth. The one thing people don't kind of realize is that graphic novels, the ones you buy in the comic stores, is more of a misnomer. It's They're called graphic novels because it's visual, it's like a novel and everything else. So yeah, so the first official graphic novel was the Death of Captain Marvel, and like I say, it was a self-contained story that tells beginning, middle, end, and it's done. Whereas what they call graphic novels now is partially that, but also just compilations of big story arcs. So, for example, one of the last big event comics was Doomsday Clock. That
Yep. Saw that.
yeah, so it was actually I have to admit Jeff Johns did a beautiful job on that thing. But basically, is you take all 12 issues, combine them together, and make it into a trade, and they call off as a graphic novel just for the sake of anything else. But yeah, and just to speak about Doomsday Clock and speak of where good writing really, really is good, is Jeff Johns really helped out integrating the Watchmen universe into DC,
Yeah.
because the one thing I know that always been a big complaint of DC for the years was always the rebooting of the universe over and over again. But the idea that it's been Dr. Manhattan doing this all this time, beautiful idea.
Yeah.
I read, I was like, oh crap, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, so yeah, that's beautiful writing, because it helps the write, especially the fans of the books and for the years, helps them harken back to say, oh, I remember that Final Crisis, I remember Zero Hour and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, now it makes sense why all this stuff's been going on. The New 52, which honestly, yeah, it depends how you look at it, but Jeff Johns did a beautiful job tying everything together. So that was, and the artwork inside, very reminiscent of Perez, and I mean, I love George Perez. So that was really cool. Oh yeah, one more guy I graduated with, almost forgot. I don't know why I forgot, was Phil Jimenez.
Okay.
It's Phil, great guy. He drew like Perez even back then,
Mm.
and I know what his dream project was to do Wonder Woman, and once he got it, I knew he probably was over the moon working on that thing. So, like I said, for me, I would love to do a Batman title one of these days if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's real inspirational. Just the kids that come up to you and be like, "Hey, what do you think of my artwork?" And a lot of artists that I know and seen at like Comic Cons that they don't really. They're like, "Oh, you can do better," or "Oh, like they don't really." They just look at it and be like, "It's okay. You can do better."
Yeah, yeah.
I,
I mean, there's that. Those artists. I mean, I know one. I'm not gonna mention names, but I'll just say he's connected to Image. This was many years ago. I showed my portfolio to one of his guys. He said, "Oh, he's got to take a look at this. Come back when he's here." I was like, "Okay, great." So I go, I wait, I go back at the right time. I show him. I give him the portfolio. All he does is just flips through it really quick, like looking through a flip book. Gives it back and he just goes, "Nah." He that's the one thing I don't like. It's that these are your fans. These are people who, like you said, aspire to be in your position. You have to remember when you were in that side of the table, and I do a lot. So I've had artists, up and coming guys, look at like show them portfolios. I'm not saying everybody's great. I've seen a lot of great art, and there's some that need some work, need some mediocre, but I don't try to downgrade them, or rather, I don't want to like feel like it's like, oh, I'm not, I'm so much better than you are and everything else. No, I know I still need work on stuff. No artist is 100% perfect. Every artist takes time to develop. But I look at portfolios. I'll suggest, okay, this shot looks okay. This is not bad, but I always try to find at least something in there. As bad as I've seen some really bad portfolios. I try to look for something that they can build up on, because the last thing I want is them to feel dejected, that why am I doing this and everything else. I'm not saying every artist is going to continue doing it, but to at least give them a seed of hopefulness and inspiration that you can do better is so much worth it. Because it's one thing that your mom says to you, "Oh, I love your work." That's your mom,
yeah.
or your brother or whatever. It's different when you get it from either a professional or your peers. Your friends might even be more honest about it than you are. But when you go to a show, you show the portfolio around. Every artist wants feedback. Negative feedback, fine, but negative feedback done in a constructive way. Don't just say, "Oh, this is crap. Why are you showing me here?" I was about to say the other word, but just say, "This is crap. Why are you showing me this?" I mean, there's a famous story. I don't know if you heard of it. That it's just urban legend at this point. Neil Adams, he he literally lambasted some kid's portfolio and made the kid cry. I mean, I don't. Again, it's a story that's been around for years. Whether it's true or not, not totally sure. But I know Neil. He's a nice enough guy. He's a bit of a hard ass, but he's a nice enough guy. Um, but that's the last thing you want to happen to anybody who's coming up to you, looking at your work, because without them, you have nothing either. And that's the one thing I do find the industry kind of missing, losing their focus on. Without the fans, there is no industry. I mean, you could do all the comic book stuff you want, do Superman as much as you want, but if there's no one there to buy it and promote it for you, you have no industry. And as much as that might annoy certain people, it's true. I'm sorry to tell you, it's true. Without the fans, you don't have anything. Same thing with Star Wars, same thing with any kind of franchise. Um, so, yes, do the work you want to do, but don't feel you are above the fans. Because without the fans, you really don't have any audience to give it to. And you're doing it to express your work and express it to everybody else. So when I see like portfolios and everything, and I see like if I notice like for example if the anatomy's off, I'll tell them okay this needs to be fixed up, but I'll give them where you can go to get better. I tell them do some more life drawing. If you see your dad sleeping on the couch, draw him. Your cat's sleeping there, draw that. At this point I tell them use reference, reference, reference. Every artist needs to use reference. Um, I know a lot of people say, oh, you're not a real artist if you use reference. No, every artist throughout time has used reference. The only artist I know that has never ever used reference, and he was a prodigy, was Frank Frazetta. Frazetta has in his life. I mean, the funny thing is he was an avid photographer. He took pictures of everything, but he never used it to reference anything. There was one story that was told where he had to draw. He was painting something for some western, and he had to paint a rabbit jumping through a road. Now he never actually. He even said, "I've never drawn a rabbit before. I've never seen a rabbit I can use for a reference." So he just sat there for a moment, thought about it, painted a rabbit. He's the only guy I've ever heard of that never used reference. Me, I use reference. I have to, because there's only so much you can draw out of your head. Every artist will tell you that. There are certain poses, for example, that you've done so many times you don't really need a reference because you've done it so many times. That's one thing. But if you're doing like a period piece, if I'm drawing drawing a story or even just an illustration that takes place, let's say during World War II, I had to see what they were wearing back then. I got to see what the environment was like. I can't just imagine it. I wasn't there, so you look for reference. Back when I was in high school and college, we had what was called swap files, and basically what we did. This was even harder work than now. Was I'd go through magazines. I had to get scissors, clip out pictures, put them in folders, and file them away. So I would have one place is 1920s dresses, 1940s dresses, or Army 1955, whatever. Nowadays, I tell people that right now there is no excuse not to have reference. You have a phone that is pretty much a Star Trek phone. Google the hell out of what images you're looking for. There's no reason you cannot find the shot you want. Or better yet, you have a camera on your phone. Get your girlfriend to pose in something you need, like a close-up shot like this or whatever. There is no excuse anymore not to work off reference. I mean, the world is out there for you to find the images you need. Done. I mean, there even websites like, let's say if you there's a program called SketchUp, which I've seen guys use beautifully, where you go to the website. There are people who have done the work for you when it comes to like doing cityscapes. There's actually where you can actually go find, let's say New York. You can find the exact street you're looking for. They've already done the sketching for you. Just download the image. You can adjust it whatever position you want on the panel. Done. No, there's no excuse anymore. Same thing goes to promoting yourself, and that's the one thing I've always tried to tell people is, especially if you're an artist, regardless, you have to be a ruthless self promoter. Always have your business cards on hand wherever you are. Go to events that maybe not even remotely related to what you work on. For example, a lot of the work I do, comic book pages, sketch cards, what have you, actually I don't even do at home. I get too distracted at home. I got the TV, I got the bed. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna take a nap. Next thing I know, I'm sleeping there for 3 freaking hours. Uh, so most of the work I do, I'll do it at a Starbucks or a Panera. First off, I get out of the house. Secondly, it almost feels like a convention because you're there with a ton of people. But for some reason, at least for me, I tend to focus better. You're there, but at the same time, while you're working, people are seeing what you're doing. Some of them might come up to you and say, hey, what's that? Or, yeah, that's kind of nice. And we talk to them a little bit. Here's my card. The reason why, and even if they can't use you, Even if they say, "Oh, it's something I really need," they might know somebody. They might know somebody who mentions in the conversation. Oh, I ran into some guy at the Starbucks. Yeah, here's his card. Yeah, you can use it. The best advertising you can get is word of mouth. The other key thing for an artist to have, and this is very very important, I always tell people, is you have to meet deadlines. If you can meet a deadline beforehand, great. But deadlines are absolutely key. The I've always asked when the people ask like commission a sketch cover for me. First thing I ask them, when do you need it by? If they say they need it in 2 weeks, okay, I'll look at my schedule, see what my day job, everything else. Okay, I can figure out. Okay, I probably could do it by then. Great. If they need it like right away, I have to up the price because you have to put other things aside to get that job done on time. And that's the key thing. You have to be reliable. There's nothing better for any art director than having a reliable artist they know they can call upon, and they know they're going to get the work done. I mean, there are guys that do work far better than me, but they don't get called because they're way too slow, or they was coming from an excuse they can't get the job done on time. And especially when I was working in advertising, that was always a key thing. I remember one night working at Gem where we had a contract to do 15 images for I think it was United Airlines, and each shot was a specific airplane we had to do in each shot. So we were there like till 9 at night to finish the whole thing. Sent it off. Okay, great. We're all ready to go home and everything else. We get a call, literally just before we all left, from Younger Rubicam. Turns out the art director there apparently they screwed up. They gave us the wrong plane to put in every image, but they still needed it for the meeting the following morning. So they sent the messenger out, grabbed all 15 images, brought it back. All of us sat back down in the studio. We actually got the X-Acto knife, cut out the entire plane from each shot, redid the plane that they wanted, had to paste it in. We were finished by 1 in the morning, but it got done. And that's why that studio, despite what they did underhandedly, they got work because they did the work on time. You do whatever it needs to get done to get the job done, especially if it's a paying client. There are a few that'll say, whenever. Even when they say whenever, I still ask for a time, because whenever could be next year, whenever could be like 10 years from now. I mean, I know guys who've asked commissions from certain artists that are still waiting, and they asked for them 3 years ago. So I try at least to get the work done as fast as possible because the faster you get it done, the next job can come in. So when I've done work, and let's say when I do like sketches at conventions, I usually try to give them at least a 2 hour time frame. It's but depending on how complex the thing is, but usually it's 2 hours because during that time someone might come in, might talk to you, say okay, sell something, whatever. So you have to also take those things into consideration. The other thing I try to do, especially when it comes to like a sketch cover or sketch card that people ask of me, is I'll give them updates. I don't wait till it's done and they say it's done. I'll let them see the process because it gives them the idea, or not the idea, rather they feel that they're part of it. So they see, the progress is going good. Okay, cool. This guy's a little late. Cool, it's fine. Because, again, things happen. So as I show them the progress, go from pencils, this is what the pencils look like so far, just the inks, this is the coloring stages. They feel involved, which helps, especially for your own schedule. Because again, you don't know when things might pop up.
Yeah.
I mean, the other day, I was working on these bomber cards. At the end of all of a sudden, I got called into work last minute because somebody called out. So okay, but at least the client knows what I'm working on. Cool, I can do it, and did the work. Came back, finished off the work, and that's the thing. You have to learn how to schedule yourself. There's so many hours in the day. That one thing I tell every up and coming artist that comes in, you have to know how to schedule yourself where you're not doing too much work, but you're also not doing too little work. Do the amount of work you feel you can handle. Don't take on so much. That's why whenever anyone asks you to do work, always ask for a due date. Because if you can bring it in just prior to the due date, great. You look even better. On the exact date, that's fine. If you go beyond that, if you do too many times, they're not going to call you because they know you're going to always be running late. And that's the last thing that's the last reputation you want. Thankfully, my reputation has been that I do my work on time, and it's good. So they get what they want, cool. And I'm not like charging outrageous prices either. I mean, I'm not charging like Jim Lee prices, but I'm not pricing myself low either.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that also people will look at you for, and also the quality of the work, is, are you worth it? Yeah, you price yourself what you feel you are. I mean, I'm not going to charge $10 for a freaking pencil sketch, especially at the level I'm at this point. Not to say I'm high and mighty, but still, you got to be honest with yourself. You have to also have a little bit of pride in your work.
Yeah.
So the one thing I remember, Buzz, who great illustrator, really cool guy, he once told me, and I took it to heart: never undersell yourself, because if you undersell yourself, they lose respect for you. If you oversell yourself, they say, "Look, it's like, you're not worth that much money. Come on, But never ever undersell the value of your work. So they see the prices. That's the prices. If there's certain things we might be able to negotiate a little bit, but beyond that, that's what it is. But you get what you pay for. It's the end, like anything. Like if one like an Arthur Adams original piece, Arthur Adams charges $1,000 for a full 18, 14, 11 by 17 illustration. But it's Arthur Adams. It's worth it. Myself, for the same thing, I might charge $300, $400, but I'll give you a little more, because I do pencils, I can do inks, and the whole deal. Again, you get what you pay for. And when I see the portfolios, like going back to the same idea, is that I try to give the artists who's showing it to me some hope that they can improve, or where I see that they're good at something, I say, oh, this is good. This is what you should show. Also, how you present your portfolio. Never show really, really old stuff. Show the newest stuff first. Old stuff, I could care less what you did 2 years ago or even a year ago. I want to see what you're doing like the last 2 months. Because if you go into an editor to show them the work, pinups are nice, but it doesn't tell them if you can handle a story. They want to see if you can handle a story. One suggestion I always give to them is two examples better. I tell them, find 3 or 4 pages from a comic book you like, redraw it the way you would have done it. Use that as samples, or do a 3-page story, beginning, middle, end. Beginning, conflict, conclusion. That way, you show that you can do a story. But what's even harder, do it without dialogue. Can you do it without actual words? Because one thing I kind of was taught, and this is where Walter's stuff really got kicked in when I was in college, is if you can tell a story with no words and make sense, the dialogue will just add to it. And that's one thing I've always tried to do with the comic book I do, or with anything else I do, is, does the story express itself without the dialogue? If it does, great, even better. And but yeah, that's pretty much when it comes to portfolio reviews. Is that I look for something that the artist can walk away with. So okay, maybe not be that great just yet, but he told me it's something I can do to improve. I would suggest them books. I'll suggest them even videos to look at, how you should approach certain things. But the one thing is, at least for me, I'll try to give them as much knowledge as I can, because as I was an up-and-coming artist, other artists were willing enough to give me information that I was able to use to advance myself. And the other thing I always tell them is that don't be afraid to copy other artists. Every artist has learned from every other artist. No one has ever I mean, for example, I studied Adam Hughes. I tried doing stuff like how Adam Hughes was doing. I mean, I take everything he did, but I loved how he did the heavier outline on outside the character. So it was very Art Nouveau, which I loved. So I kind of took that upon myself. I took that in. I even tried doing some Alex Ross kind of work. And I saw how he did the foundations for the painting, the underpaintings, and the stuff over it. And I applied it to work I do. Every artist has learned from every other one. There is no such thing as this is his work and that's it. It's the way you approach it. That's the style. Style for me is not, I mean, I guess you want to call it style for anything. For me, I just call it just the way you work. I mean, if you see Jim Lee's work, and if there was no name to it, you would know it's Jim Lee. Same thing if you saw Arthur Adams' work, Alex Ross, Adam Hughes, John Cho, John Cho. You could just tell who it is. But overall, they all learn the same basics. It's just how you approach the basics afterwards. You have to know how the anatomy works. That's why sometimes when I see kids showing their portfolio and it's all like manga, anime, it's nice, but can you draw a standard looking human being? Because I have to tell them that, yes, you show me this anime stuff and everything, but the artists you're looking at, they also know how to draw people regular, standard features. They know exactly how to do the same thing. Because once you know really well the basics, then you can break the rules. Then you can exaggerate the eyes, you can exaggerate the nose, whatever. But you know the basics. And from there, because you have to tell them that, doing that stuff is fine, but you have to know the basics regardless. Any industry, you have to know the basics on whatever it is. And, but yeah, so in the end, how I show portfolios is that I try to give them a plethora of knowledge, try to give them some encouragement, not be mean about anything, but always do constructive criticism.
That's awesome. That's awesome. A lot of inspirational words and just a lot of inspiration, and hopefully, if somebody watching this, definitely can
Yeah, hopefully.
grasp your word. Before we end the show, um, who's your favorite character? I'm assuming Batman. And where can people find you to check out your work?
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, definitely. Yeah. My all-time favorite character growing up was definitely Batman. Uh, mainly for the reason he's just a regular dude. I mean, there's nothing that separates him more from me except the fact that he's got tons of money. you know, and he and if you really think about it, I mean, Superman and Batman, they're pretty much the polar opposites of each other. Superman is the symbol of outerworldly strength and power, whereas Batman is the zenith of human potential. I mean, this is a guy who's really driven. Yeah. So he's the most a human being can do just as himself with the right amount of money to surround you. Uh, but also just it's a great noir character. There's so much stuff you can do with it. It reminded me so much of like the early like the shadow stuff, and people almost kind of forget that the concept of Batman is not really original. Before Batman, there was the Shadow, who was this rich guy who goes off in the night like the Shadow and everything else. But it's also Zorro. Zorro is the same. It's basically Zorro is Batman. Yeah. He's a rich, wealthy guy. He has a hacienda in California. He goes out at night. He goes on his horse, Tornado, puts on the mask, fights for the poor, steals from and fights the wealthy and the rich. Yep. It's and the tornado, Batmobile. Zorro with the mask, Batman with the cowl. It's the same. It's the same idea. It's an old idea, but the one thing with Batman is like you can do so many different things with it. You can have him fight the Predator. You can have him fight the alien. And also the thing that makes Batman great is not just the character, is the fact he's probably got the best rogues gallery ever. I mean, Superman's got Brainiac and a couple of, but come on, Scarecrow, the Penguin, Catwoman, Mister Freeze. You got Sandman. You got so many freaking characters that can go against them. And I know some of the best characters are pretty much like mirror images of him. In the sense that the Joker, I mean, it's like probably the best villains out there. Not just the fact that he's maniacal. It's just the fact that everything that Batman aspires to be or is, Joker's the polar opposite. So that makes him a great antagonist. And you can't. And the hero's only as good as the villains he fights. So yeah, Batman for me is my all-time favorite. Overall, but yeah, X-Men I still grew up with. I love that. Alpha Flight. I mean, my biggest inspiration, artistic wise, was John Byrne, and I got the privilege to meet him twice at his home when we lived in Connecticut. And he to this day he gave me the best compliment on my work. We actually wanted to steal concept art from me, so I was like yeah, do it. That was really really cool. But aside from that, where you guys can find me now, I'm predominantly on Instagram. JRodArt71 on Instagram there. You contact me. I also got my Facebook page. Look up James Rodriguez. I'm right there. And those are two prominent places. But if you're in the neighborhood in West Nyack, I'm at Newberry Comics. I'm the assistant store manager there. Come on in. We have free comic book day, all that kind of stuff going on. And a little shout out to my wife, Mitzi. Next month we'll mark 1 year Married 1 year in October. And Miss Arlotka is unfortunate. She's still in the Philippines. I'm going to go see her in October out there, but it's tough. Immigration, so especially with this administration. I'm not going to get into politics right now, but it's been tough. But this has been fun, man. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, man. I've learned a lot. I've a lot of inspirational words you said. Um, congrats to you and your wife. Hopefully you get to see her soon. Hopefully stuff comes down a little bit. Hopefully she gets to come to the States again. And yeah, it was good having you. You guys can find me on Instagram. It's official. You can follow MDMC on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Louis Haspuro, but I'm not on there a lot. Um, but thanks, James, for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, man.
You guys have a good rest of your day.
Peace out.
Everything will be on the description below with all his information. Peace out, guys.